You are listening to the Slow Living Podcast, and I'm your host, Stephanie O'Day. What if I told you that you could truly have the life of your dreams, the life you've always wanted, one filled with abundance, joy, and a sense of purpose? It's absolutely possible, and I see it each and every day with my coaching clients. It all starts with learning how to slow down. You deserve to live the life you've always dreamt about. Let's get started. Hi there, Slow Down Society. Steph here, and we are on episode 140 of the Slow Living Podcast. And we started a few weeks ago a slow parenting series, and it's not going to be in order, and it's not going to be like 6 episodes in a row or something like that, because that's not actually how my brain works. So I did an intro, and then I had some other interviews, and now I'm back with another edition of the Slow Parenting series, which is to be determined. Who knows how many numbers we're going to have, but this is number 2. And today I want to talk about how to create mindful kids, and especially what your ideas are versus what actuality is, and especially in the newborn stage. And I am thrilled to have Fallyn Buckley in the house. And Fallyn, I actually know in real life, for realsies. And Fallyn is amazing. She is an experienced family coach, certified elementary school social worker, and certified positive discipline parenting educator. She's worked with hundreds of children and families for over a decade, specializing in social and emotional learning, which is SEL, and child development. Fallyn believes that every child and family has the capability to learn and develop their social and emotional skill set and intelligence. Along with being a kids and family coach, she's a social and emotional learning coach for the elementary school district in Newton, Massachusetts. Fallyn, thank you for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited because I've been on your mailing list. So I know Fallyn because she was our school counselor in the school of which I currently am the school site secretary. And she got married and moved away and had baby. And then started this mindful coaching. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like exactly why I liked having you in the school, so I could hang out and talk to you. And you have this great online service, and you're doing all of this along with being a brand new mom. So thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it's been so nice to reconnect. And I had my baby girl in August. So it's been a whole new world for me as well, which has been really enlightening in many ways.
Okay, so August, and that means as of this recording, she's not yet a year.
No, she's just turned 9 months.
9 months. Wow.
Which is a really fun age. I'm enjoying this stage for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I know that your whole idea and why you and I always connected when you're a counselor in the school is you like the idea of the whole child. So yes, there's the academic accolades and all of those things, but you've always been very aware and mindful of raising future humans and humans that you want to be well-rounded.
Totally. And I'll go into a little bit of my background. So I always loved working with kids. I was a camp counselor. I felt like I really remembered my childhood and who impacted me and who was detrimental to my childhood. And I unfortunately had my parents were great and my friends' parents were great, but our teachers were pretty bad. And unfortunately, I didn't really have any adults to look up to in my education experience. So that was like really impactful to me, where I wanted to be the adult that actually gave a positive experience to kids. So that's kind of how I got into social work and specialized in school social work. So I became a school counselor because I really felt like I wanted to be a positive impact on students' lives. And I felt like, where can I reach the most kids in schools, and where are kids spending all their days in school? So through that, I went to grad school and got my master's in social work, and I specialized in school social work. And through that, I learned about social emotional learning. And I was like, if I had this when I was younger, this would change everything, you know? And social emotional learning used to be a nice to have, and everyone would be like, oh, that's cute that you do that. But now I think people are realizing more and more this is a must have, right? And basically what social emotional learning is emotional intelligence and just being aware of yourself and others. And I think it's just such an important aspect that you can provide for children, and hopefully in a positive way. And I remember a lot of times you'd learn these skills through a negative experience. And my goal was to help teach these skills through a positive experience and practicing instead of being embarrassed or, being mean to a friend and realizing that wasn't the way to do it. So I thought, being proactive and teaching in a fun way, because that's how kids learn, is through play and fun, would be great. So that's kind of what my inspiration was for my career trajectory. So I got into being a school counselor, and I was the first school counselor for this school, my school district, which was really exciting to be able to kind of pave the way. And I was basically a cheerleader for SEL, and they implemented it, which was great. And they've since, taken it and expanded their mental health team, which is really great to see. And through that, I obviously realized that kids have parents and they need support too. So that's when I really became into helping parents as well. All my things were, you have homework, make sure you teach this to your parents because you're a master when you're able to teach it. Would be always my thing to say at the end of the lessons. And I want to be a resource for parents and realizing that, being a parent is a really challenging task. And a lot of people don't have the experience that I had growing up with kids and studying all of this and going to grad school, specializing in this. So I wanted to be able to be that support person for kids and families as a whole unit, so that they, could realize that this is normal, what you're going through is normal, and help them not feel shame or guilt, but also provide them with the skills and support needed so they could feel successful and they could, make changes that would positively impact their family. So that was kind of where I've been. And so that's when I started Mindful Kids Coaching. I wanted to do a little more to support families outside of the schools as well and be that support. And I know that finding support for children and families is really challenging, especially post-COVID. So I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you. I'm lucky to know you. You taught me about the First Step program, and then also
Second step.
Second Step, excuse me. And then
I don't know why it's
we can link to it. And then also with the Kimochis, and I've talked about the Kimochis quite a bit on the podcast, and then also with my own coaching clients. And then I know they're coming out with a second like Inside Out movie, which is sort of very,
I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, very similar. And so Kimochis, we can link to it, but they're these cute little stuffed animal crittery guys that are your feelings. And the idea
they're little
is
feeling pillows.
Yeah. And it's okay to have these feelings. Like you don't have to like shove them aside, like embrace, okay, I'm really angry right now. Like, great. Okay. Let's be okay with being angry, because I don't know about you, but I mean, I was told, stop being angry. Don't be angry. Go be happy. And that's a really hard leap from being angry to happy.
Totally. And one of the Kimochis, one of the first lessons that, it's so funny to teach to kindergartners is it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to be mean. That's it, And that's just so good for them to realize, like what is okay versus what is not okay. You're allowed to have your feelings and you can't hit that person. And I'm going to give you other things that you can do that is appropriate. So it's great that there are curriculums out there to help, because I think a lot of us don't have the words, or we find ourselves just doing what subconsciously is already there, So it's nice to be intentional and have the curriculum to follow as well, which is always helpful to me. One of the things I learned from Second Step as I'm teaching kids is like always and never blaming words. So when my husband and I are, conversing or having a moment and we say always or never, we're like blaming words. And I learned that, teaching second graders. So it's like, we're always learning, and it's great to always be a student when these things happen, because we are human and we need to remind ourselves of that. And I think having a child and had a newborn and having a tough transition into motherhood made me realize that more so than ever. It's like, oh my goodness, I have these skills and I'm struggling, and I can't even imagine for all the people that didn't have my background and what they've been going through. So it was just really a thing that made me realize how important support is, and acknowledging we are human with these lovely feelings that are going to come no matter what.
Yeah. I'm glad you talked about the acknowledging each other and the support. And I do want to talk about your transition into motherhood. But to go back to the schools, there's a lot of like us versus them mentality when it comes to parenting and the schools.
Mhm.
And in my point of view, from being on both ends, is we all just want the best for the child.
Mhm.
And being able to speak the same language and realizing we're all on the same team is absolutely necessary. But do you have any suggestions on like how to bridge that gap to make it
Yeah,
seem less so like we're
right.
preaching to parents versus like I don't want to take away parent rights, but I also want parents to parent properly.
Right, exactly. And I think that goes on both ends of, for the school to communicate, like, we're on team Ryan, if the kid's name is Ryan, and really emphasizing that. And that's up to the school to really make sure that they are conveying that to parents, so parents feel that way. Because obviously parents get into Papa Bear and Mama Bear mode and are like, we want the best for our kid. And we hear this kid has an IEP. Why doesn't my kid have an IEP type of thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's conveying that you're a team and also educating the parents and making sure they know their rights and what's out there before they need to start digging, and then they feel like the school is trying to pull a fast one type of thing. So I think that's really important too. And that starts from day one when a parent enters your school with a child and fostering that community. And that's always about like fostering a positive school climate, which can be really hard to do. And so I think it's like a really big challenge for schools across the country, for school districts across the country, to make sure that parents feel welcome, they feel heard, acknowledged, and knowing that, we're on your side and we
Yeah.
want the best for your child as well. And I think that can be really hard because there's definitely some tricky situations that I've been part of in the past where it is hard when the parent wants one thing and the school feels like that is not the thing that the student needs. So it can be very challenging. So making sure that you're building that relationship, and that goes with any relationship. Like one of the things I've learned through positive discipline that I really believe in is connect before correcting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to connect and like make sure you have that relationship before you correct or say, no, you can't do that, or no, we can't provide that for you. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, that we have your child's best interest, and that because we've already established a relationship and who we are, and that we are professionals that care so much, So I think that is really an important step that I think all schools need to hopefully foster. And then sometimes it's just not going to happen, and sometimes you just have to do what you think is best and communicate as fairly as possible and try to self-regulate and remain
Yeah.
calm when someone is feeling heightened, because
Yeah.
those things can get heightened at times.
Do you think in general, so it's tricky. Sometimes I see now with these kind of younger kids, the TKers that are coming
Mm-hmm.
in, they're teeny tinies. We are now like teaching manners
Mm-hmm.
and we're teaching, no, you can't come into the office and say, I need an ice pack. We're going to start over again. Good
Right.
morning, Mrs. O'Day. I hit my
Right.
head. This is my bump. I would like an ice pack. And so
Mm-hmm.
I repeatedly say it over and over again. And to me, that feels like parenting.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just different expectations. And I think it's hard because they have never been in the school environment before versus home where they don't do that when they hit their head. So you're just another adult that so I think it is a parenting thing. And I also don't know if parents know to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's a miss for both. And I think also, um, parents are working a lot in
Yeah.
order to, and I think I took the year off this year and I was
Mm-hmm.
lucky enough to do that financially. But it also didn't really make sense for me financially to go back to work to have most of my paycheck go
Yeah.
to daycare. So that's
Yeah.
just a really hard situation to be in. And so, a lot of parents are entrusting other adults to help raise their children.
Yeah.
So I think that can be really challenging too, especially when parents are working from, 5 o'clock, get home, get the kid home,
Yeah.
dinner, brush teeth. Like, where is the time to foster that? And maybe I could be wrong, and that because I haven't been there yet, on that side. So I'm sure there's families out there being like, we do that, and
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to hear. But I do think, from my perspective, it's like a yes and it's like, yes, and you get to teach them that. And I'm sure by the end of the year, they're going to totally know it, nail it. And next year it'll be great, and it's just the expectations different adults have for them in different, environments.
Do you find that now that you're a mom, you have a lot more compassion for the sheer exhaustion of other
Yeah.
parents?
I mean, I feel like I was like shot out of a cannon and was like, go, and recovering from a traumatic C-section situation to like, just the expectation of it all around and the fact that you need to do all this. Like, it's just, you gotta feed the kid, you gotta wash the kid, it's just like, it's nonstop.
Yeah.
And it takes a toll on all your relationships, and it's just like, there's nothing that really prepares you for it as much as you can prepare for it, I think. So yeah, it made me very empathetic for the young moms, the moms that don't have support, that don't have family around, the moms that, just like aren't prepared for this or, so it's just like, yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of emotions and sadness for the way that our country supports our young mothers or lack of. Yeah, it was very interesting to see how to go through that and to, go through like a 6-week checkup where that was it. And I was like, really, this is it. This is a little scary to me. Yeah. So I feel like we are not serving our families at all, which is really upsetting to me. I know there's a lot of like, postpartum doulas, which is an amazing thing, and it's very expensive. So I'm like, gosh, this should be a service, this should be a right. So it was a very, and like sleep deprivation is just another level where I'm like, this is kind of dangerous too in some parts, like it was like such a whirlwind challenge that I am like very proud of, how I got through it and how everyone gets through it. And I'm also like shocked that people do it every day and like, downplay it, so it's just like, wow, it's a lot. It's a lot. I think we are asking of parents, without supporting them enough. So I feel like, providing more support and more like empathy and, things that I think people need these days. Yeah.
So since you are, and I'm gonna typecast you here just because I know you a little bit.
Yeah.
You are a researcher and you are well organized and maybe a tiny bit type A. And then all of a sudden, this tiny little baby being is thrown in your world who hasn't read the books you've read. How did you like just, okay, it is what it is, or was it a struggle? Like did you beat yourself up? Like, I should know this.
Yeah, I think I beat myself. I would think I like at points when I was like, I babysat my whole life. I've interacted with babies and it was still so hard. So at points it was like, what's going on here? Like I should be really good at the, type of thing, or this shouldn't be this hard for me. And I think it was. And that's also what made me realize of like, I would take any support, even though I have done this before. I've been with babies and before. And it made me realize like, I just like kind of want someone else to do it for a second. And that's where I kind of understood how with parenting, we're like, the parents should do it. And with their own kids, like they just need that extra support or someone to be like, hey, here I am to tell you, like, just here's a skill, like focus on this, just tell me. At this point, my brain was so fried and I was in such a brain fog that I was like, I totally get why parents, need the extra support, or it would be surprising to some people be like, gosh, they just, and it's like, they could, but like there's too much going on, or they just don't have the ability right now. They're at capacity type of thing. So I think that like gave me empathy for that while trying not to beat myself up being like, this shouldn't be this hard, like I'm just literally, have to, this newborn phase, the newborn phase was very hard for me. That sleep deprivation, the hormone drop, everything was just like a big, the expectations, so I like, when I had a thing where I like started when I was like, when I'm starting to feel resentful, that means like I'm not speaking up of what I need and I need to figure out what I need and like tell someone what I need. And that was a hard thing too, because I was like, even like forming the words to say what I need was like challenging. I was like, what do I need? So it was like a very interesting interesting growth period of like communication skills too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we're recording and we just had Mother's Day this past
Mhm.
week, and I've been on the phone quite a bit with people who were disappointed perhaps maybe in Mother's Day, because I think if you are an intuitive and empathetic person, which you are, you've always been that person, you can read someone's face and
Mhm.
immediately be like, oh, she needs some tea, or oh,
Right.
she needs some water. And when other people in your life can't do that, sometimes it's disappointing because your needs aren't being met, and you don't really want to tell people. You want them to anticipate your needs because you know how to do it. Like, gosh darn it, it shouldn't be that hard. But it is. It is. Like this is a skill you have, which is what makes you an
Yeah.
amazing social worker and counselor and all of the things that you do. And that's why it comes easy to you. But it's not necessarily easy
Yeah,
for
you totally
others.
nailed that one on the head, especially with my husband, which was like a
I know.
big
And I'm
thing for
sure
us.
he's a great guy.
He's wonderful and he tries
Yeah.
his best. And
Yeah.
like the best quote, he was like, "Oh, bedside manner matters." I was like, yep,
Mhm.
it does. I'm gonna need you to like check in and bring me that sandwich with a smile on your face. Yeah, so it was yeah, it's been like such a growth period for both of us. And we are totally like growing together and reflecting, and it's been really nice 9 months later. But the first couple were very challenging. So I wish someone like would have given me the heads up with that
I'm
too. A little
sorry.
bit.
I'm sorry. So it's interesting because
No need to apologize.
well, I am going to apologize because I'm pretty sure I told you you would be a natural, and I know you are a natural,
Yeah.
but because of the way you are, and I knew you were leaving and I knew you were going to start your family, I'm certain people who have been there, done that, and are looking back on the newborn phase in like rose colored glasses. And I
Mhm.
mean, my quote unquote baby is 14. So it's
Right.
definitely rose colored glasses. Um, uh, Probably telling someone, oh, you'll be great at this, or oh, you'll be a natural, isn't helpful or useful. And we're too dumb to remember that because humans want to forget the hard stuff.
Right. They black it out. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And so I feel like, and I felt that during my newborn phase too. I was like, this is hard. And I feel like, it should be like talked about a little more. Like it's gonna be challenging and you got this and it's gonna be challenging. And I feel like the internet is great and terrible in some ways. Comparison is just terrible in some ways, but it was also nice to see some other moms, like, I don't know how they're recording and feeding their child and doing all the things they're doing,
Yeah.
but it was nice to see other people going through it. And support groups are great. The area I live in now provides free play groups through a
Mm.
family center, which is really nice. And that's been like really nice to do that and share, experiences with people. And I think that has been really beneficial as well for me.
Yeah. My first, she's 22. She was a Velcro baby, and we were living in a thin-walled apartment complex, and I had just left well, sort of a social work situation where I was
Mhm.
running preschool centers for disadvantaged children. But because of that, I had a lot of contact with CPS. And I
Mhm.
was terrified that if I put her down to pee or something like that, somebody would call CPS, which in
Right.
hindsight was probably postpartum psychosis. And I didn't know it because I thought I knew everything. But I mean, I vividly remember nursing her while trying to go to the bathroom and all of these things, which is so silly now because I wish I had been like, Steph, it'll be okay. Nobody's going to
Mhm.
call CPS
Right.
on you. But I was terrified.
Of course. And babies cry.
Babies
Right.
cry. They
That's
do. It's okay. And now I
yeah.
tune it out. It's so cute because my sister-in-law and brother have a 4-year-old and 2-year-old,
Nice.
and they are amazing and wonderful parents. Like my hat is off to them there. But they constantly are like, "Oh, I'm sorry about this," or they'll say, "I tune out. It's not my offspring. I don't care. You
Right.
do you."
Right. Yeah.
Hey there. Are you looking for an easier way to meet your goals without sacrificing your ethics or morals? If so, you're going to want to check out the new masterclass I recorded on how to achieve more by learning how to slow down. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but I promise you that this is a proven system that works. If you're ready to finally meet your personal and professional goals without sacrificing yourself or your sanity, check out this new recording at stephanieodea.com/masterclass. Okay, back to this week's episode. Okay, so on a day-to-day basis now, are you like when you meet new people, do you talk to them like, okay, I'm a parenting coach and I can help you with this? Or do you just kind of introduce yourself as I'm so-and-so's mom?
Well, because I am meeting people that are mostly with babies and new babies, and so I typically work with elementary school age children, so
Mhm.
I don't really talk about it that much. Yeah, and I've like also been really focusing on like this being like a maternity leave type of thing. So that was like my first newsletter back that I wrote that you
Oh,
saw
okay.
and got in touch. So it's been nice to be back, and this is like a good way to get me back into it as
Okay.
well. And it was very nice that I was able to take that long because I was also like, wow, 3 months and I'd be going back to work. This is crazy. I'm not ready
Yes,
and she's not ready.
I know.
So that was interesting to think about too at that moment. Um, and I know so many people do it. So yeah, but luckily also through the community I live in, they have a Facebook group that is like amazing. So they have different like little, I would call it subreddits, even though it's not, but
Mhm.
and they have one of like careers and so there's a self-promotion page where I will let people know that I also am a parent coach and family coach
Mhm.
as well.
So you moved away from Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
So when I tell people this, they really look at me like I'm nuts, but it's not uncommon for someone in a parent teacher conference with like a first grader or a second grader to tell the teacher, well, I want to make sure they're on the Stanford track. So like what would your response be to someone who who
Yeah.
who who is like shrouding their child in that expectation when
Right,
they're
right.
literally like they can't tie shoes yet?
Right. I think it is hard because they're surrounded by it, right? And that's who their community is, and that's who they want their children to be successful, who doesn't want their child to be successful. And it's important to kind of bring them back to where their child is now and meet them where their child is, right? And we want to, we always, when we have a meeting about kids, we say, what are some of their successes, or what are something they're really good at, or something that, is really positive, and then what are their challenges? Because we want to acknowledge that it's okay to have challenges, and that's what we can work towards. And I think it can be really hard for parents because, they're signing up for preschool when they're pregnant. So they're always ahead, right? And that's just kind of the way society has created this craziness. So they are on that track, and school is to get to that point, right, in their mind. So I think it is important, to come back to being present. And is your child happy? Are they doing things they love? Do they feel successful in their own mind? Like it's not like the grades matter to a point, and like, are they learning? Are they enjoying learning? What are some of their hobbies? Like let's expand that a little bit. Are they, their creativity? So I think it's important to, validate parents that they obviously want their child to be successful. And depending on the child, like what does success look like for them?
Mm.
And like, are we focusing on their happiness? Are they focusing on, do they have good friends? Do they need support with that? Like, what are things they enjoy type of thing. So I think that's really important. As I'm sure it is going to just get crazier and crazier as we go on, as it does get more competitive, and as the world is changing very much. So it's important to kind of help parents stay grounded, to help their children stay grounded, because as we know, kids feed off adults, especially their parents. So if that's what the kid is growing up with, it's kind of creating this anxiety for them, that there is this expectation that they may not be able to meet because it's an unreal expectation. Only a certain amount of people can get into Harvard or Stanford.
Yeah.
So, and we want them to be as successful as possible. And we also want them to realize that no matter what they do, they can be successful. And there's a lot of people who didn't get into their number one school that are very successful.
Yeah.
So, telling those stories too, and expanding their opportunities of, I always like told people, the pressure of what you want to be when you grow up. Like when I was in school, Google didn't exist, when I was your age. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like just do it, you'll figure it out. A type of thing. And there's options to change. And, so I think it's like that pressure that's always going to be there. And that's normal. And parents, are told to start saving for college when they're pregnant too. So it's on their mind all the time. So
Okay.
I think that's also, playing a role in it. And it's important to help parents realize like, let's take a beat. I think like, going for a walk is just as powerful as getting them to their violin lesson every week. So I
Mm,
think it's important to kind of emphasize that part too of the quality time together, I think is something that I promote all the time. And I
hmm.
think that is way more powerful than them going on to the Stanford track.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you brought up the violin. And then I wanted to ask, I know your own daughter isn't quite there yet, but in general, what is your thought on like after school activities and tutoring and Kumon and
Mhm.
all of the different things?
Yeah, I really think it's child dependent, like I feel like Russian math. It's like so interesting. I talk about it with my friends, we're like, why Russian math, But there's just like a certain thing. It's here, it's where I used to live, it's everywhere. There's
Okay.
Russian math that people talk about.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not there yet as my own as a parent, so I'm not exactly sure. And I can only reflect kind of like on my experience and then this experience of my students that I've gone through the years with. I feel like it concerns me when kids are, really tired coming to school. When kids are burning out, like that is not okay for me in elementary school. Like that is a sign right there. I do encourage like one day a week of nothing, if
Okay.
that, at least. But then we had, someone who was a gymnast and she loved it and she went every day after school for like 4 hours, but she had no complaints and that was her passion and that's what it takes to be a really good gymnast. And I was like, "Are you sure? Are you good?" And she had parents that were very type A and like lawyers and like that's just kind of their family, but they were thriving. Like I didn't hear anything that was kind of like concerning to me about it. So I really think it's child and family dependent.
Mhm.
I think, it'd be nice if the schools provided more extracurricular things, like it's great that some schools have instruments and stuff, but a lot of schools don't provide that. So that would be nice if the schools could provide some of that so they could get it during the school day as well.
Mhm.
Because I think it's hard for parents and kids to be running around after school all the time, and figuring that out and feeling rushed and, scarfing down dinners to have basketball at 6 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely a challenge and figuring out, for your kids, what's worth it to them and what's not. And, reflecting on that. But I do think it's very community too. Some communities really, have certain sports that they're really into that, everyone feels like they need to be a part of. So just checking in with your kid every so often, I think it would be the most beneficial thing for you. And noticing, obviously, mid-year, everyone's tired, but like,
Yeah.
if it's a constant thing or if this isn't really working, I think it can be really hard to continue going to things over and over again and not
Yeah.
liking it. So I think it's important to have your child try and commit to it, and
Mhm.
then also let your child know it's okay to not continue if you're really not feeling it too. Because I feel like a lot of kids feel like they have to continue things because of the parents. So I think it can, I mean, go both ways,
Yeah.
but we want to be
Yeah.
able to make sure our kids are heard and like,
Yeah. So if someone's listening to this and they're out of the newborn stage and they're in that kind of frenzy of elementary school
Mhm.
and they're realizing, okay, so the trajectory we're on seems a little fast paced and I do want to slow this down. Um and help shift from this kind of fast mindset to a calmer and slower one. How would you suggest sort of doing a factory reset?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think, taking in like the schedule and what that looks like and keeping things that are really meaningful to you and your family, whether that's a certain activity. I also think, and it really is family dependent. Some families like love the adventures on the weekends and going skiing every weekend, whereas I'm like, oh my gosh, that would not be good for me. Like I need rest, So I think it's important to know your kids too, because maybe parents and kids could run on different energy levels too. So, and intentionally adding some quiet time, intentionally adding some like, let's just like relax or let's just play a game type of thing. Just to kind of bring it down and not have to be running everywhere, I think is really, really important to do and an easy way to kind of implement that of like, how much downtime are we having and make that just as equal as how much activity are we having is like, where is our downtime? Like, where is our rest? Even if it's, like once a month, you have like an intentional weekend where it's just going to be a chill weekend where you're just resting. I think that's important. And every family's obviously going to be different about what that looks like. But I think intentional downtime is really important, especially because we do need to know what to do during downtime and like what it is to quiet our minds, because that's when our minds kind of get a little anxiety rises up from that. So like allowing us to learn how to use downtime in a beneficial way versus letting our brains kind of be search for something because it's not filled with something else, right?
Yeah. So on that note, what is your I know again for your own child you're too young, but in general, do you have like screen time limitation recommendations?
Yeah, so I typically, it was so funny because at our previous district, I was on this like technology tirade right before COVID where I was like, here's the screen times. And I was like, that just went out the window because now we
I
have
know.
first graders staring at the screen, which I do
I
not
know.
love.
I know.
So I think screen time is also very family dependent. I mean, we are a world run by
I
screens.
will like to point out right now, I love how diplomatic you are. You do a very
I
good
am
job.
because I mean I can't, like it's just so everyone's so individual and like I used to be more against screens than I am now because it's so everywhere. You just can't avoid them like unless you are very intentional about avoiding them. And I think a lot of parents from what I hear is that without screens behavior is better. It's just like hands down. I've heard it over and over again. We took away the screens, behavior is better. Like that is just and it makes sense to me. So I feel like if you're having a challenge, try that. But it does take effort. It takes intentional practice. It takes you monitoring. So it takes some bandwidth to do that, right? And it takes some consistency because if you don't do anything consistent, it's done. Like, and then you're just gonna be in this roller coaster of yes, no, which will stress you out even more. So I feel like I would love no screens, and I love this new movement of, realizing that it's going to take a community to come together and say no phones till high school.
Mm.
And I think that is so true because, the friend has it and you're going to hear about the friend. So that's why I want it. So if the community of parents come together and say no phones till high school, I mean, there's enough research out there saying it's so bad. So
Yeah.
it's, like
Yeah.
I'm addicted and I have a fully developed brain. So, so it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it's such a blessing and a curse. And I just don't know where it's going to go. I'm very thankful that my daughter is at her age. So I'm hoping that like phones become uncool by the time she gets to 12 years old, and like technology, like kids are getting smarter and smarter, kind of like cigarettes where like kids are like, oh, gross now, which is
Yeah.
great. I want that to be the new phone for, hopefully that's becoming like, oh, you're on technology, like gross. So that's my goal, my
Yeah,
intention of putting out to the
I
universe.
like that. I like that goal, and I like the idea. I do know that I took away a smartphone from my kindergartner last week, and the last few days we've
Yeah.
had first graders and second graders with smartwatches where they can
The watches
call.
are tough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
And I
watches are really
know,
tough, and I get it from a parent standpoint.
right.
You
You want to
want
be
to
connected.
and you want to track your kid.
Right.
So I get all of that, but had someone declare it was an emergency and needed to call mom. It was not an
Yeah.
emergency.
Yeah. I
But
do not think they need a
yeah.
direct line to parents during school. Like, my family friend has sixth grade boys and they're like texting her all throughout the day. No, like I just, yeah, I mean, and at the same time, this is where we're at right now. So like I can say no, but I'm not there. I don't have sixth grade boys. I don't know,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's like
Yeah.
I can say
So
no.
yeah, and that is one thing that I've always really appreciated about you is it's you can have an idea, and if other people's have different ideas, you don't fault them or judge them. It's just, okay, if it's working for you, it's
Right.
working for you. But if you're coming to me for advice because it's not working, then let's explore some different ideas
Right.
before immediately dismissing, oh, well, that won't work.
Exactly. And I do feel like the technology and the like with kids is no bueno. It's just dangerous. Like a third grader cannot communicate via text appropriately, and it causes so much drama that they should not, it's inappropriate. Like it creates way more than what they're getting back. Like I just feel like it really, that I do feel pretty strongly about, because I think especially third grade girls, like there's a lot of drama that age anyway, which is
Yes,
developmentally appropriate.
yes. Let's highlight
It's
and circle that third grade drama.
third grade
OMG.
girls. It's like, I mean, it's developmentally appropriate every year. I'm like, I know I'm going to get you ladies. Like, get in here. Let's talk about some iMessages.
Yep.
And I don't want you guys talking on on the text because it's going to be, it's not, no, you're
Yeah.
home, be with your family. Like, or, or WhatsApp or whatever they're doing, or on
Yeah.
video games, they chat on
Yeah.
Roblox.
So I will tell you this, and anyone who's listening, take this with a grain of salt. My kids have phones and they got them I don't know, seventh grade-ish, mostly to text after school to say I need a pickup from soccer or something like that. They have never had their own Apple ID login. So because of that, they can't put anything on the phone ever without me trying to remember the very complicated password that I made up for each of them. To the point where two have gone off to college and then come home and they're like, so I need this app. Can I have it? And I'm like, okay, now you're 18. Yes, you can have your own Apple ID. But they have my older two have since thanked me for not allowing social media, because they've seen it firsthand with their friends that it hasn't been good for their brains. They don't have, and by not having it, you can go online to the URL and search and read. They just didn't have an account because they didn't have the Apple ID and that kind of stuff. I trust them. Who knows if they made a desktop account? I'm not a forensic tech scientist. I don't really care. Anyway, that was their feedback. My youngest, 14, she asked a few weeks ago, Mom, can I have Snapchat? And so we were just on the couch watching TV, which is literally the best way to have conversations with children, is when you're not looking at them and you're doing something else. And I said, oh, and I said, well, why do we want Snapchat? And she says, well, my friends have it and I think I would like it. And I'm like, okay. So we watched TV for a few more minutes. And I said, so do your sisters have Snapchat? And she said the name of my middle daughter. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, you talk to her. If she tells me it's a good idea, then we can revisit this. And then like within 20 minutes, that my middle daughter calls me. She's like, Mom, it's not a good idea. She shouldn't have it. It's bad news. I'm like, okay. So there
Perfect.
you go. And that like,
that was perfect.
Well, I mean, it's having my 19-year-old parent my 14-year-old, but it did work in this situation. So
yes, I mean, you asked for her opinion and she gave it. So it's not really parenting, but she felt like it wasn't appropriate. And that's I mean, I'm sure your 14-year-old isn't thrilled with her.
And so, well, it's been a few weeks and it hasn't come up since. So
I think
we're okay.
So okay, great.
Yeah. And I will say that I'm the mom who drove the minivan with all of the kids in the back. And if I heard things like, I have 600 Instagram followers, I would look at them in the rearview mirror and be like, that's not okay. That's weird. Does your mom know that? Because you don't know 600 people. That's creepy. And I, as an adult, am fully okay with saying that no teen girl should have 600 Instagram followers. I still think that's creepy.
Yeah. Yes. And it is promoted as like the best thing ever. And that's what people, and that's now everyone wants to be a YouTuber, right? So it's it'll be interesting to see the trajectory of where it goes and how that technology, transitions into something else that I'm sure we'll be like mortified by. But it really is, it is detrimental. There's enough research on it. So I think hopefully as, I hear more and more organizations and things coming out helping parents, because again, like we don't know, like we're just here trying to raise our kids and do right, and make sure everyone's happy and copacetic, and also making sure that they're socially okay too. Like no one wants to feel left out. That's a terrible feeling. So yeah, so I'm hoping that more and more people are coming together to band together, because that's how it's going to really have to happen, is a community situation. They're saying schools can't do it, the government can't do it. It has to come from community.
Yeah. I like that. And I'm glad you brought up the research and the data. Because one thing when I was driving home and I knew I was going to get on the phone with you is I wanted to talk to you, especially as you're entering your parenthood journey of data-driven decisions versus like intuitive decisioning, especially
Right.
when it comes to parenting.
Yeah, I think I'm learning more and more about it. I think, I mean, there's so much, it's so interesting of like what you're told. And of course, in the beginning, you're like, I just want to keep this baby alive. So I'm going to do whatever you tell me, like whatever, and then there's a book, this author, Emily Oster, I don't know if you know her at all, but she is for moms probably around 10 years now. She wrote this book that was all about, she uses data she's an economist
Oh,
to,
I have looked up that book. Is it Oster?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Emily Oster.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
look up the name of
Yeah.
that book because I know what you're
She's
talking
great.
about.
Yeah. So she's done like pregnancy, she's done like up to preschool, and I think elementary school now, of like different things where she looks at the data actually and is like, can you have a drink when you're pregnant? Yes, you can have sushi actually. And she goes through everything. So we're not like driving ourselves crazy. So yeah, I really like her and I follow her on Instagram actually, and she has a lot of great things to say, and she's very data driven, which is nice, but and not in like you must do this type of way. She's like, here's what the data shows. It's up to you. And I think that of course you need to follow your intuition, and it's hard to know what your intuition is, but if I was just following data, I would feed my daughter, the exact same time every day, no matter what, and sometimes I'm like, you look a little more hungry. Let me give you another bottle. I'm like, oh, you were hungry. How about that? So it's like things like that where, yeah. And I like can't follow an exact schedule. It's just that my brain doesn't work like that. So it's like, I kind of just like do, a loose schedule, but we follow like what you're feeling, or what I'm
Yeah.
feeling that you're feeling, type of thing. So I think intuition is really important. And I feel like, as people say, like, your kid best, so it's like, what your kid needs.
Hmm.
And it's important to slow down, to take the time to check in, right, with yourself and with your child, because I feel like because, you're doing way too many things, because this is what world we live in, you are not able to check in with yourself and hear your intuition, or hear what your child, or see what your child's doing, and see what's going on for them. So it's important, again, to slow down, take a moment, take an intentional downtime to check in, whatever is going on, and I think that's really important. And I think it's hard because sometimes intuition versus like anxiety or ego, and like telling the
Hmm.
difference has been really interesting, especially around now. More for me, not less ego lately and more anxiety type of thing. Like, is this
Yeah.
anxiety or is this my intuition? Type of thing
Mm.
to figure that balance out.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So if you're if you've got kids in school and you're working and you already know that your time is limited
Hmm.
and you're feeling maybe a little insecure about that or a little uneasy, how do you make sure that the time that you have, like in the evenings, to
Hmm.
make those like quote unquote quality time? Like, do you have
Yeah.
advice so people don't
Yes.
beat themselves up?
Of course. Yeah. So my last newsletter was all about special time. And I love the concept of special time because it's doable. And I feel like the most important thing that anyone could ever give you is to make sure it's doable, right? Like if it's not doable, it's not going to happen. And then what's the point? So special time, it can be usually for younger kids, elementary school is like 10 minutes a day. And then you decide what you're going to do for your special time. Are you going to play a game? Are you going to go for a walk? Are you going to draw? Whatever it is, you can decide. And then, for that time, it's 10 minutes, no phones, set a timer. And I love timers just in general because it puts, a beginning and an end to it. And the timer's telling us to stop. I'm not telling us we have to stop. The timer is. That's for anything. So, and you have your special time, and that's your time. If there's other children, they'll get their special time another time. It's you and that child, and they have your full attention. It's not time to comment on what they're not doing right or correct them. It is just like connecting time. And that is quality time right there. And that is intentional, and it's so great. I'm excited to start implementing that when it's ready to like actually put it into practice for my own daughter. I'm really excited about that because I've seen how impactful it can be. And it's really, and once it becomes part of the routine, and it's really nice because if you are busy, then you're like, hey, I can't wait for our special time tonight. And if you can't do every night, that's fine.
Yeah.
3 times a week, whatever. If you can't do that, fine. Once a week, and it's like, make it work for you. It does not, just know that it's called special time. Make sure you're acknowledging it as special time so they know it's special time.
Yeah.
And that is just something that can really make your life easier when you do have to correct, or you cannot give the time at the moment, or, your child, needs to be redirected. And then, you have that special time. So you're building all those connections so that when there is a disconnect, it's not as a big of a challenge for you and your child.
But you're not suggesting that special time ever gets taken away as a punishment.
No, never. It is never something to be taken away. No. And I think consequences are important, and I always like to front load consequences, so I think it's important to talk about if there is a challenge. You can acknowledge it in the moment, but I like to reflect after the challenge, be like, hey, that was like a really hard situation where you did this. Do you know what was going on for you then? And they can talk about it when everyone's calm, like when tempers are flying, and front lobes are not working, like you cannot have a good conversation. So it's not even worth it. So just like, nope, just everyone work on calming down and come back later. Don't try to teach a lesson when you're not regulated or your kid's not regulated. Like they can't learn. No one's learning. So don't even do it. Don't waste your time.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, but I think it's important that when you are reflecting to ask them, like, next time if that happens, what do you think I should do? And kind of put it back on them. Like, what do you think that you should have to leave the room? Do you think you should have to end the game? Like, and let them kind of like decide what they're going to do. And if obviously they're like, I think I shouldn't get anything done, nothing should be changed, then you can be like, that doesn't work for me. And you can, continue the conversation. But it's important that it's like you're working together type of thing. I think is really impactful as well.
I think that's great. I like that. I want to piggyback one thing for anyone who's listening who might work from home. When I work from home with littles in the house, one thing I did was we front loaded, the way Fallyn suggests front loading is we front loaded the special time of, I have a writing deadline I've got to do, but so we're going to set a timer and you get the first 15 minutes of every hour, but then you need to go build Legos and color and leave mom alone for the rest of the hour. And yes, huge fan of timers, mostly because I think I always wanted a personal assistant. So the idea that I can boss Siri around is so much fun for me. And she does all this.
She listens.
She does. Yeah. And honestly, all day long, I'm setting timers at work because kids are coming in and out of my office.
Of course. Like, yeah. I mean, I need timers for everything. I'm like, oh yeah, you need to eat again. Okay, good.
Yeah.
How was it with the special time with your children when they had the first 15 minutes?
Fine. Because I paid them first. So, so they got it. And I mean, like literally like what they wanted was to play tea party or store. Gosh almighty, they love store. And so I would just eat the fake food and and makes them happy. Fallyn, thank you. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me and the Slow Living society and for being on the podcast and for answering my email when you sent out your newsletter. And I think I wrote back to you like within 3 minutes because I'm a little hyper eager. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. And I love slow living. And I think it's so amazing that you are spreading the gospel of slow living. I think it's so important. And the more we hear about it, maybe we'll start doing it more too. So it's a great reminder for me. And I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm going to have full links to all of your to your website and to your offerings.
Awesome.
But if you're right now looking, it's all one word, mindfulkidscoaching.com. And this is Fallyn Buckley, and she's a real person, and she's an amazing and wonderful. And you reach out to her, she will write back.
It's true.
All right. You take care. Slow down, society. As always, I think you're amazing and wonderful. And I will talk to you again next week. Do you have a slow living story to share? Leave me a voicemail at stephanieodea.com/podcast with any questions, comments, feedback, or testimonials, and I will be sure to include it in an upcoming episode. Also, if you found value in this episode, please share it with your family and friends and subscribe through your favorite podcast provider. The more you share, comment, and leave positive reviews, the more people we can reach and share the slow living lifestyle and messaging. Thank you, Slow Down Society, and have an absolutely wonderful day.